What is an underwriter? If you are getting a home loan, you may be wondering, who is this mysterious underwriter everyone talks about? The underwriter is a key part of the process and the one who ultimately determines the loan approval of your home loan. So you will definitely want to know what is an underwriter and what they do. Before we get started, please do me a favor and subscribe to this channel. I have a true passion for home loan education and helping people realize the dream of home ownership. I work with a lot of first-time home buyers too. So if you know someone out there who would benefit from this video, please share it. Okay, so what is an underwriter? There are a lot of people that go into the home loan process. And so a few of those people that you're going to come into contact are, one, initially it's going to be your loan officer. So that's the person that's going to be more of that high level strategy person that's going to listen to your wants and hopes and desires and briefly run through that loan application with you, look at your credit report and start to formulate a plan and a home financing strategy. Once you're pre-qualified and you're under contract, then the loan processor is going to jump in and their job is to review all of the documentation you provided, review your credit details, and start to move your file through the home loan closing process. And then lastly, the processor, once everything is all brought together, current pay stubs, current bank statements, assets that you're liquidating potentially for the down payment and closing cost, updating your verification of employment, all of that stuff is what the processor does. Once that's ready, then they submit it to the loan underwriter. And the loan underwriter is an actual human being. They are the person that's going to look at the lending guidelines, review your credit profile, your loan application, together with all of the documentation provided, and they're going to ensure that your home loan meets the lending guidelines, and they're going to approve your home loan if everything works and meets those lending guidelines. And I say if because there are things that happen during this process. So maybe once your file has been submitted to the loan underwriter, maybe you lose your job, or maybe something's changing with your credit profile or things like that. That's why it's really so important to be sure that you're communicating with your lending team as you're moving through this process of any change in your employment, any change in your credit that you're aware of, any change in your assets. All of that is super, super important to the end result. Why does a loan need to meet the lending guidelines? Well, keep in mind that most loans originated in our country are originated to either Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac if it is a conforming conventional loan, or FHA, which is backed by HUD, or USDA, which is also backed by HUD, or VA, which is backed by the Veterans Administration. Now that's going to give you a wide range of different loan programs that are available. Oh, and one more, if your loan is a conventional loan that exceeds the conforming loan limits, then it's very likely going to be what's called a jumbo loan, and those guidelines have their own set of rules and processes. So each one of these types of loans are going to have their own rules. So when a lender's talking to you and they're telling you that maybe the lending guidelines require a certain credit score, or require a number of months of reserves, or require down payment, all of that is going to be based on the loan program that they are looking at for you. And so it's not necessarily the lender per se. Initially, we're all going to start with these lending guidelines based on the loan program that we are talking with you about. Now, some lenders, on top of those national lending guidelines, some lenders will have additional guidelines that they put on top of it. So they may say, you know, FHA says X, Y, and Z in their guidelines for buyers, but as a lender, that lender may decide to change any of those guidelines and actually make them more strict, which is quite often out there. And we call that an overlay. So that would be a lender overlay on top of the standard agency guideline. What is desktop underwriting? Now this is really important because there's a lot of confusion out there. So remember, I mentioned that you're starting with your loan officer, you're providing all your documentation, you've completed that initial pre-qualification application, you've had your credit pulled, and the loan officer and the processor are pulling together all of your documentation. Well, what they're doing is they're going to submit that information through what is called desktop underwriting. And desktop underwriting is going to be the automated underwriting system that each of the loan programs use. And what's important about this is that it's a machine. It's not an actual human being. We're going to enter all the information into the desktop underwriting system, and it's going to come back and tell us if, based on that information, and that's really key, because if the information is being entered incorrectly, then it could give a false positive. It could give a false approval. That's why it's so important to be working with a team that really understand and kind of dive deep into your particular scenario up front. So when they're telling you you're pre-qualified, that you're in fact pre-qualified. All right, so that desktop underwriting machine, we submit the information, and based on that information, we're telling you, okay, great, you're pre-qualified. Next step is go find a house. You go find a house, and that desktop underwriting system, again, is now updated based on the particular property that you're purchasing. And remember, when that processor is submitting the file into underwriting, that physical human being underwriter is going to review that desktop underwriting system, the requirements that it's calling for, and ensure that the information that was submitted to it is accurate. As a reminder, an underwriter is going to dive deep into your income, your supporting income documentation. They're going to calculate your debt to income ratio and ensure that it meets the lending criteria. They're going to go through line by line by line of everything that's on your credit profile, making sure that, again, it all meets the particular loan program that you are applying for. All right, now the underwriter has approved your loan. Generally, though, they're approving it with conditions, which means that there might be a few additional items that the underwriter wants or needs to be able to give what is called final loan approval, which is what you're vying for. That's the game, that's the plan, that's what you need in order to be able to close your home loan and get your keys. So approval with conditions, what's going to happen is the processor is going to call you back, let you know we have loan approval, whoop, whoop, and the underwriter just needs a couple of more items. That could be maybe an updated pay stub, or maybe your assets haven't been transferred yet, so we need to have an updated bank statement. Or maybe there was a question on the pay stub that wasn't addressed early on in the process. That's what generally you're going to hear back from the processor with regard to your approval with conditions. How long does underwriting take? Well, the answer is it depends. It depends on the company you're working with. It depends on the loan. It depends on the complexity of your scenario. There's a lot of different things that go into the underwriting turn time, as we like to say. But in general, you can count on roughly 72 hours for initial loan underwriting. What can you do to ensure a smooth home loan underwriting process? Well, it really does start from the very beginning. So when you're initially talking with your loan officer and the processor, provide them with the documentation that they're requesting, because that documentation, trust me, the devil's in the details. It's all in the documentation. Also, be truthful. If there's something that's going on in your life and you have a sense that it might impact your home loan approval process, talk with your team, talk with your loan officer, talk with the processor. Trust me, sometimes people want to hold on to this information and they know it and they're worried about it. If you just communicate that to us as your lending team, we can help navigate what to do with the information. Much, much better to hear and learn of what's going on in your life early on in the process, as opposed to once you're under contract and you're getting ready to close on your house. Now, the mysterious underwriter, that person out there that's actually going to review your loan and give the loan approval, assuming that your loan meets the lending guidelines, it's really important to know that not all companies allow loan officers to talk with underwriters. And I think that's a really big miss, because underwriters can be so helpful to loan officers and processors early on in the pre-qualification process. So if there's a question and we're not quite sure what to do with the scenario, we want to be able to have access to the underwriter up front so we can run through the strategy, the scenario, what to do, how they're going to look at certain things. Because trust me, all kinds of things come up in this process. Things that you would be like, wow, that's never happened before. Well, stuff happens. Life happens. So it's our job to be able to take in the information, review the lending guidelines, and if we need to talk with an underwriter to get a game plan, then we need to have access to that person. Here at our company, we do have access to underwriters, but not all loan officers do, and that's really, really important to know as you're navigating through this process. Please remember, underwriters are here to help you achieve your goal of home ownership. They are not against you. I feel so many times people take things that are being questioned about this process personally. It's not personal. We all are trying to come together and do our very best to set you up for success. Unfortunately, though, with the federal lending guidelines, there are a lot of hoops sometimes depending on the scenario. So hang in there. Detach the emotional part of the equation and really just work with your lending team to get what's needed to get to that finish line. As a reminder, it's always recommended to work with an experienced lender. If you're in Arizona, California, or Colorado and you'd like to talk more about your personal situation, please feel free to call or text 480-725-0150. Otherwise, if you have questions, comment below. And don't forget, like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you soon.